called returning to homeostasis, all right? And we'll probably use that word 3 or 4 times because we're going to be talking about it later, but that just means the way, we'll look at the bottom of the page there, right? A relatively stable state of balance. It's where the systems biologically and mentally maintain stability, okay? So it's just functioning the way God created us to function is what it means. We want to return to that. But here's the thing. When you feel that you're broken, or you feel that, you have to be perfect, any perfectionists here, or if you feel that you have to please people or you're codependent and all this, then for a lot of the time you're not feeling safe. I walked around for years with this hum going on, decades with this hum going on. And it's kind of, it was sort of like the one foot was on the gas, the other was on the brake. And it was just hyperactivity, kind of looking around like as if there was a predator in the room. And that's called hypervigilance. And it wasn't that that I wasn't functional. I was functional. But it was always this, boy, I don't want to get in trouble. I better do everything okay. It's got to be this way, got to be that. And don't, make sure I'm doing everything right. And it was just never stopping, relentless. And a lot of us, we're just so used to it. Now, here's the thing. If you would have told me I was that way, I probably wouldn't have believed you because it was my normal. And you'll be surprised how we get used to our normal. And we'll stay in our normal even to our detriment. Because a lot of times it's easier to stay in our normal than to try to venture out and change, because change can get scary. And if we're in a fear-based situation where we're already fearful, change can be very fearful. But I'm telling you, change can be good. And we have choices today, and God will guide us and direct us in that, okay? Well, look at the first exercise. How much stress is too much? Have you ever been overstressed? What caused it? What did it feel like? What did you experience? Now, those of you you don't have to share at your table. This is where we do table talk, Yeah, you don't have to share. You can just say pass or don't say anything. No one's going to judge you for that. Those of you that have been here, you might want to share. But why don't you take a few minutes, and if a couple of you at the table or something, just what was it like to be overstressed? What did it feel like? Explain a little bit. What was it like in your body? What was it, did you feel it in your head? What did it feel like? Okay, so share a little bit about what it felt like to be overstressed, okay? And maybe if you know what caused it, share that. So take a few minutes and do that. All right, take about one more minute. Take about one more minute. All right. One way that we can do emotional recognition, start to recognize emotions, is when we are reacting. And we react differently to different kinds of stress, and we have all kinds of choices, right? We can be nervous. Some of us might just shut down, kind of more depressed, just thinking about it. Some of us might just take action and get real busy. Others of us we may cry or get angry, right? An opposite emotion. Some of us just numb out. We may grab for substance or something that just helps us numb out, avoid it. And sometimes if we can know how we react to stress, that could be the first indicator. As I'm starting to do that, I say, whoa, what am I doing? What's happening? What's going on? And we might be able to catch it there as we're starting to react. And so that's part of what we can do. Now, what's interesting is that even infants, because this stuff is built into us even as an infant. Now, infants don't sit around and tell you, I'm feeling sad. Father dear, I'm feeling complex. But infants do. Now, I had an infant draw this. No, anyways, all right, this is something I just want to interject. Can I have 2 volunteers here? Hank, come on. Come on, Michelle, you can help, all right? Just kind of come on up here if you can, all right?
Can we?
You'll do it right there, all right? Well, maybe, yeah, we'll do it, Michelle. Give Michelle a hand, come on. All right, thank you, Michelle. All right, so what happens, what we know is that children react, and there's energy in the body, right? Energy. It can be low energy, right? Or it can be high energy. And then there's what they call pleasantness. Now, this comes out of a book. Let's see, I think I wrote it down. Mark Brackett, author of Feeling Your Emotions. He worked on this along with some others. But it's interesting, and pleasantness is kind of an interesting term, what's it mean? But you have a continuum. Down here would be low pleasantness, and up there would be high pleasantness. And, of course, energy, there's low energy and high energy. And so high energy and low pleasantness, and then you have low energy and low pleasantness. And so in each one, you can see that there's different kinds of reactions. And if we can start looking at ourselves and start saying, okay, maybe it's energy. Am I feeling kind of lethargic? Boy, am I up here? And then pleasant. Am I feeling good about something, or am I feeling, real avoidant, don't want this? And so, for example, in the high energy, low pleasantness, that could be enraged. I'm enraged, right? Or it could be angry, which is less. It could be nervous, which is less. Depends how, where you are on that continuum. Or it just could be an uneasy feeling. See, so you can have within each quadrant different ways of feeling, but we need to start naming some of these things. There's a big difference between enraged and uneasy. Mm-hmm. When I started working on my anger, I didn't want to own up to that. I was enraged because that's what I thought anger was. But one day, all of a sudden, I'm reading something, and all of a sudden, the term came to me, frustration. And I thought, Oh yeah, I really get frustrated. And I was able to start dealing with my frustration, which can be, intense, but it wasn't an enraged. I wanted to stop before there. And a lot of times we need to name it so we can tame it. Now, your high pleasantness and low energy, what would that be? More calm, right? It's very pleasant, but low energy, relaxed, right? Carefree. Way down would be serene, right? You see how we can have all these different kinds of emotions. Now, in low pleasantness, in high energy, all right, boy, I don't like this at all. My energy's up here. What? Disgusted, right? Despair, sullen, and so, I'm disgusted with this. And then, so there can be different kinds of, in high energy and high pleasantness. Well, that could be ecstatic, inspired, being an optimist, being very hopeful. And so, even in children, now they don't go to that degree, but it's interesting to know that that's wired into us. We look at life on a continuum. Is this pleasant or not? Now, some is learned after a while, and energy happens. So if you can start to think in those terms, too, that might help. Thank you. Let's give Hank a hand here, huh? And so I just wanted to throw that out a little bit to let you know that there are ways that we're going to start looking at that will help us start to signal to us that we can start to recognize when things are starting to happen. And your homework this week is to try to start finding out, and you may need, you may have an episode and you didn't think of it till afterwards. Well, then go back and look at it. What was going on? What did it feel like? Where was it in my body? Was it all up here? Was it in my stomach? Was it in my head? Start to learn who you are emotionally. Because if we're going to change, we need to become aware. Awareness is huge. If we don't become aware, we can't change. You can't change something you're not aware of. And it's not a sin. We're not looking to condemn anyone here. What we're looking to do is change if we need to, right? Or make some corrections if we have to. And so that's what this part is about. Now, look at page 3. What happens now is that childhood immaturity causes these erroneous self-beliefs. And after a while, now a child, if it's neglected, a lot of times neglect could cause more of a shutdown in their body, a learned helplessness. Mice, they cry and no one answers. And they just, they become, sort of that low energy, right? Low energy. And so what happens after a while, when they can start to putting thoughts to it, they start thinking, well, what's wrong with me? How come, I must be no good if I'm being neglected? There's something wrong with me. And because a child doesn't have that ability to say, boy, my parents, really blew it here. They don't think in those terms. It's very much about me. And a child is born, with the need to know that they matter, that they belong, that they're lovable, that they have worth. You are supposed to know those things about you. And if you don't, you may know them here, but if you don't know them here, and I'm just finishing a book on changing the things I believe, and I crossed out believe and put feel are true. Because I could ask you if you've ever felt stupid, and you'd probably answer logically, well, no, I've done pretty good in school, I did all right, I'm not stupid, I'm not the smartest guy, but I'm not. But if I ask you, have you ever felt stupid, or has anyone ever made you feel stupid, you might say, well, yeah, I remember my teacher in 3rd grade. Well, those things, those felt beliefs, and that's an important word, felt beliefs are carried with us in our body and in our emotions, and they trigger us without us even knowing. And that's part of our being a detective, is what is triggering me? Why am I, if we're going to be resilient, we have to come back from an emotion, right? We have to know what we're coming back from. And so a lot of that. Now, a lot of this what our beliefs and that stuff happens when we aren't known as lovable and have worth, when we weren't safe and comforted, when we weren't feeling significant or having honor. And a lot of that comes and it creates trauma. And with trauma in our life, a lot of times we'll be spending some time on trauma. No one goes through life unscathed. We all have different kinds of trauma. Now, there used to be capital T, small t. I get it. Some trauma is worse than others. I understand that. But trauma is trauma. And you can see down here in the middle of page 3 there are 3 kinds. Trauma caused by something happening that should have never happened, right? And so that could be, someone bullied you in school. We know all about child abuse. That would fall under that category, right? Then there's trauma caused by something that should have happened but did not, and that's like neglect. And you'll be surprised how much emotional neglect and things have gone on a lot of times, and it's left us with some things that we believe about ourselves. And so then there's trauma caused by sickness, accidents, deaths in the family, disasters that families a lot of times go through. At the table, now, there can be trauma by the way people react to you, if your family's different than other families, and you're new in the neighborhood, or you join a new group or something, you got a new kid at school. A lot of times that can be very traumatic, right? So take a few minutes at the table here, look at some of the traumas, and maybe someone, or you can give an example of one of the 3 traumas, and just share a story or something if you want. And again, just listen to each other, and maybe some of you have had trauma a little bit. Don't go into great detail. We're certainly not trying to trigger you. If a trauma is 1 to 10, don't start sharing any 10s, okay? We don't want to traumatize you at all. But you might know examples of other people that had trauma. Talk a little bit. Is there such a thing as trauma, and can it happen to people? Go ahead and share at the table. Are you kidding me? So, what? Why? What's going on?
Pinch cord underneath the whole system. You should see this cord. It looks like someone went into it with a high heel shoe. I don't know the way it is. Yeah,
I'm so tired of it.
That's the kids. That's the kids spinning around. They move that big unit. That's the jack. I can't even pick up one side of it. Pinch the cord. You just saw it. Just happened to see it. That's why they're going in now. So apologize.
One, testing, test. All right, take about 1 more minute. Take about 1 more minute. All right. All right, let's continue. By putting a limit on these things, I'm adding stress to you, I understand, but but otherwise, wonder we'll be here all night. This class, it used to be 2 hours long, and I'm trying not to do that to you. We've cut it down to an hour and a half, so we keep moving along. But I encourage you to, if you haven't shared yet, you can share. We'll keep doing exercises, so hopefully everyone gets a chance to. You know, on page 3 and 4, or top of 4, are some of the things that happen as a result of trauma in our life. Now, some may not have all, some of these things. Some may. If you do, well, then here again, this is, a time to be honest in the class like this and be able to say, Lord, help me with some of these things. It may not be all the time, but for example, explosive anger or abrupt changes in emotions, self-destructive behavior, numbing out, social withdrawal, agitated, kind of almost manic depression, loss of motivation. You can see some of these things. Some of us may have suffered with some of these, some may not. There's been on page 4 all kinds of studies where there can be memory disturbance, inability to concentrate, learning difficulties, distorted self-perceptions, different post-abuse shame and guilt. Some of us walking around, I had false guilt like you wouldn't believe. All kinds of difficulties with trust, interpersonal difficulties. So there can be a lot of things. And then physically, digestive issues, migraines, some of the sexual dysfunction going on, chronic pain, poor energy. There can be a lot of things that are a result of things that have happened in our life. And it's not so much that it happened to us, it's how we interpret it and what we believe about ourselves and life that causes the problems. I mean, if you had someone beat you up in 6th grade, that was 10 years ago. No, it was a long time ago, right? Yeah, I heard an amen out there. But anyways, it was a long time ago, right? And yet the effect of what that did mentally, making me believe that, I'm inferior or something else, that's what can cause the not wanting to go back to it. See, that's where the pain comes from. Look on the page 4 there. We had these needs. I need to feel safe and secure with those we trust and love. I need to feel love for me is constant, unconditional, and always there no matter what. I know that I am loved, special, valued, and unique. I can return to peace and joy from painful emotions. That's why we call it living with the fruit of the Spirit. It dawned on me was, we've been doing this 15 years. One of those years, I was reading, of course, Galatians there, and he talks about the fruit of the Spirit, and all of a sudden I said, oh my gosh, that's resilience, right? Returning to love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, almost any negative thought, behavior, and that can be cured if we return to those things. And that's what the Holy Spirit wants to build in our life. I mean, we have hope today. Tell the person next to you that we have hope today, okay? I know you've heard that before, all right? You're getting good at it, all right? We're going to say that a lot. There is hope today, and you need to believe that and know that, because it may be that you haven't felt some of these things. Now, here goes back to what I was talking about, the homework, the handout. Some of those things that are in the devotions that I gave you, these things, a lot of them have to do with relationships and what I believe about myself. And here's the thing. I believe God can heal all this, and he does it through relationships. 2 very important relationships. 3 relationships to those that we are really close to. For example, my wife. A lot of the things that have been corrected in my life emotionally have been because of the unconditional love of my wife, and things that she's built into me caused me to believe that maybe there's something good about me because she sees something that I didn't see. Others are that there's fellowship, community, and we need it. And then we're going to learn in this class about eye contact and about attunement and about how to look at each other and really listen, be a good listener, an active listener, because when I look at you and you're talking and I act like I'm really understanding you, that says to you that you care. That I'm important, that there's something okay about me. And that communicates to us where we may not have been feeling that, and it starts to correct those things. And so relationships are important. And then finally, the relationship with God. We weren't meant to do this alone. You know, this isn't a psychology class, all right? I mean, we talk a lot about the psychology, but this isn't about how we just can fix ourselves. We can do a lot. We can do a lot in community, but without God, I don't think we can get as far as we really can get. Because God is the one that really can affirm us. He created us. His love is unconditional. He's there all the time. And we need, and yet some of the trauma in our life has caused us to distrust God. And so we'll talk about that. And we'll talk about some of that stuff too. So some of this is getting to where we can trust people, where we can trust God, when we start to trust ourselves. There's a lot of this stuff that goes on. You didn't know emotional resilience was so complicated, did you? It's not complicated. It's just complex, you know. It doesn't have to be complicated per se. And so you can look at these maturity needs, and I would encourage you to take home and circle these and rate yourself 1 to 5 and say, Lord, this is where I think I'm at. Help me to get to here. And then just keep this in front of you and make it a prayer. Lord, I need help. You know, like look on page 5 there. Lord, I don't feel that I have a real purpose, a meaning, and a freedom to use my strengths for good right now. I don't even know what that means. I really am lacking that. Or I believe it is never too late to have loving, caring, nurturing. Lord, I'm afraid to trust again. I'm afraid to step out again, that I might get hurt. You see, the effects of trauma, as you look on 5, can last a long time, and you can read about that. Our brain is a vast learning machine. If a belief is repeatedly believed, it results in making neural pathways, right? And so it creates a bias then. We start to see things. We look through certain lenses, right? And we already have a negativity bias. I mean, God created us with one. That means that we look for things that are dangerous more than we look for things that are good. That's how we stay safe. You're walking through the woods, the wildflowers aren't going to kill you, unless you eat them maybe, you know, but the animals could. Tripping over a root near a cliff could kill you, right? So there's a lot of things, and so we automatically look for the things that could harm us. Now, that's okay when we're talking about woods, but what if we feel people can harm us? You know, what if I have social anxiety and I don't want to go there because, you know, they're obviously going to make fun of me. They're obviously going to, you know, I can't go there. I'm not, you know, this and that. Now, you see, we put up all these kinds of areas where we don't feel safe. And look at the diagram there. When there's trauma and non-secure attachments, and we'll talk about attachments later, don't worry about that, we can start having a lot of worry, fear, and anxiety in our life. And that gives us a low capacity for resilience. Capacity is an important concept here. lot of us don't have that capacity. We haven't learned. We don't have enough experience. We don't have the wherewithal yet to really bounce back from emotions. We've been doing it the other way so long. We've been reacting, numbing out, whatever it is. Not, it just is what it is. We've been coping, the best we can. And so a lot of times we escape. And there's all kinds of ways to escape. But if we can start having healthy attachments, healthy relationships, and we can do that in this class, that's part of why, I encourage you to stick at a table that you like and get to know each other over this period when we're together, where we can start really sharing, praying for each other. Then faith, hope, trust, our relationship with God starts building, and that gives us a high capacity for resilience. And so a lot of this is cured in relationships. God heals us in relationships. We don't do it by ourselves. Does that make sense? Relationships is key. So start praying about that. Lord, help me start to be able to relate to some others and take those baby steps I need to start really believing things about myself. Because when someone's happy to be with you, I remember the first time I talked about that in a class once. I was talking, I stepped down on the floor, and I said to the person right there, we were using an example, can you imagine when we do this, and I'm telling you this, you get that sense that, I'm happy to be with you. And tears started going down her cheeks. Because she felt like, someone's happy to be with me? That's an amazing feeling, and you'll be surprised how many times we don't feel that. We protect ourselves. And a lot of it comes out of these false beliefs about ourselves. And so when we don't have these maturity needs that weren't met, we have a lot of these negative beliefs. And what we have then is this hyper pattern recognition where we're looking for these clues all the time that will trigger us, facial expressions. Let me give you an example. If you were in an abusive situation where dad would come home and yell at everybody and disrespect you, and it doesn't even have to be a real violent thing, but you could tell when he put up in the driveway. We had a gravel driveway. You could tell when the way the car stopped in the driveway. Oh, if it was like slamming the brakes, you knew, oh boy. You could tell by the way walking in the door, if the door slammed, or the way, or the voice, hey, is dinner ready? Man, you're ducking out the window because you know that it's going to be a heck of a night. You get used to this and you start reacting, and the thing is, we start believing it's something wrong with me when we're real little, and it sticks with us. And so, for example, I use this example all the time. Young lady, a young girl, or a guy, either one, let's say, they've been raised in an environment where maybe they don't feel socially adequate enough. There's something wrong with them. They start going to school, and they start, walking like this, right? That kind of, not sure about everyone, and, but they know who's cool. They know who the popular ones are. And they see him over there, and they look, and it's now they're in school, and they're walking down, they see the popular, and they can't help it. They look again, and they see the one guy laughing, and their eyes meet. And they look like this and keeps walking. Right then, who do you think they thought that person was laughing at? Them. That person could have been laughing at anything. But right there, that was reinforced that I'm no good. They're laughing at me. I'm no good. See, and we don't even pay attention to how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times we reinforce these negative beliefs about ourselves. It's our normal. And part of emotional resilience is learning to recognize these lies about ourselves. And you can hear that word lies repeatedly in here because they are lies. God wants us to feel safe. He wants us to know that we're worthwhile. He wants us to know that we're loved. Those are the truths, that he didn't make a mistake with us, and that we do have a purpose. That's the truth. That's the truth. And so what happens is Dad comes home, he yells at you or something like that, or what's wrong with you, can't you do anything right? Well, he just doesn't go back there in an English accent and go, son, what's wrong? You never do anything right. He's got a tensity in his face, his body language, he's spitting, maybe there's beer on his breath, and all this stuff. So what does your brain think right there? Your brain remembers the smell, the body posture, the look on the face, all that stuff. That's what triggers us later on, are those kind of things that part of the brain, we'll talk about it in the weeks to come here, remembers. And a lot of times we're triggered without even knowing it, just like I said. Ron, could you come here for a minute? Now those words, Ron, come here for a minute, there's nothing dangerous in those words. But for me, this look said, you are in a peck of trouble right now. You've done something wrong, and it's punishment time. That's what that would translate to me. Now, the guy could have just been doing that because he can't see very good, and he's got bifocals or whatever, and he may have had pizza for lunch and it didn't sit well with him, whatever. But my mind is already going down the road, you see. And part of what we want to do is recognize that, regulate it, realize, hey, this, it's not about me, and we start to learn, and then we go on and we figure out, and we'll talk more and more about that. Let's take a break. We take a break usually around 8 o'clock for 5 minutes or so. Bathrooms, if you go through the doors, the first hallway there, go left, and the bathrooms are on the right. We have beverages and water and snacks in the back. Let's come back at about 8:08. Now, for those of you that are watching online, I want to apologize. I guess our first 20 minutes were offline, and I hopefully you'll come back, and we'll figure it out. Maybe we'll edit it down for you, okay? All right, thank you very much. All right. All right, let's continue. I'm telling you, I like the fellowship. This is great, man. We got some good fellowship going on and high energy. That's exciting. Let's look at page 6, okay? Here's the catch. The brain has set up many of its pattern recognitions based on a response of a child. Now, what do I mean by pattern recognition? That means the things that we look for when we're on guard. You know, what are people thinking about me? What triggers me? All that is specific for each one of us. It's different for each one of us. And we'll talk more about that when we get into the brain. But the point is, a lot of it is set up based on a response of a child. And we'll try to, go through this here. These dangers that we had growing up were perceived when we were much younger through our emotional brain. And you'll learn when we talk about the brain that our first 7 years, we're learning emotionally. Our rational part of the brain isn't even online yet for rational thinking. We can do numbers and all that stuff, but rational thinking isn't online yet. And so the hippocampus, that part of our memory, doesn't even come online till we're 3 or 4. So that means early childhood trauma is remembered through the amygdala, through that limbic part of the brain. And it's out of our awareness, but we remember the facial features, the tone of voices, the things like that, words sometimes. And so what happens then is that we interpret things, and we start making assumptions and self-beliefs and predictions based on all that, and it's immature, childish thinking. I mean, how many of us, if something happened, we'd go to a 6-year-old and ask them to interpret what just happened for us? Well, what do you think? Why did they do that? I mean, Art Linkletter did that, for those of you who are old enough, when he said children say the funniest things, right? And you'd be surprised. And we laugh when we hear them, but we can't believe sometimes what we believe personally about ourselves. Look at the bottom of page 6. And again, I encourage you to read some of this stuff, right? Because we need to emotionally relearn the truth. And when we look at some of this, if I asked you intellectually, are you broken? You'd go, no, because we deny things, right? And frankly, intellectually, we don't feel so, but that doesn't matter. Emotionally, we may. There may be certain circumstances where we don't feel good enough, where we feel inadequate, we feel inferior. And that's not something that makes sense to us, but it's here. And that's why a lot of times these things, if we really get in touch with them, will bring tears. Not horrible tears, but I mean, they're emotional. No one wants to feel that they're damaged goods. There's something really wrong with me. If people really knew me, they would reject it. How many of us have that kind of feeling going around? Boy, if I took this mask off, no one would like me, right? Or my sins are worse than other people if they only knew, I don't need anybody. Nothing works for me. Take a few minutes and look on page 6 and 7 and just read some of them. You don't have to check them off right now because there's other people at your table and all that. I get it. If you want to, fine. But if you don't, fine. You can do this at home. But look at some of them. And this is where prayer comes in. Lord, help me understand if I'm feeling this way. And the Lord isn't going to just, he'll nudge you slowly. I mean, but just here again, ask the Lord to just open your eyes to some of these. And here again, they're on degrees. I can't trust anyone. Well, maybe that applies some places, but I don't feel trusty at first. So go ahead and read them, and I'll start again here in a minute, okay? Now, it's easy to read the list and feel some of them, and that's okay, because, we're here and we don't want to really get in touch with it, and that's okay, and I encourage you to go home and really, there's many more things you could consider, but here's the question: have I made an agreement with these? See, that's a little different than just thinking maybe, do I really, I don't need anybody. I learned, I got hurt before and I don't need anybody. Well, that's going to hurt our relational kind of stuff we're talking about, right? Have you made it, nothing works for me. Well, have you made an agreement with that? I mean, do you really, really agree with that? If so, then we need to challenge that, because that's a little different than just thinking, well, yeah, that kind of resonates with me, This is where, we need to really pray. God doesn't really love me. You can be a Christian and really believe that, and I challenge some of these things, and we need to, but we need to, first of all, have I made an agreement with them? Because then we can start to say, well, how do I disagree then? How can I start to disagree with this? How can I really start changing my mind, okay? You see, a lot of this started in childhood. If you came up here and I hypnotized you, okay, and told you that when a phone goes off, when a phone rings, that means there's a bomb in the building and you got 10 seconds to get out before it blows up everything. Well, if you watched anyone hypnotize, okay, it's been suggested they have ability to have suggestion like that, and then you put the phone on, and all of a sudden, can you imagine? They'll be in the back of the room, the phone rings, whoa, quick, get out! And they're screaming and all this stuff, telling you to get out and everything, and you're looking at what's going on. But in that moment, they feel that that's really, really true, okay? Well, what's interesting, if you read this page, look at the middle of page 7, okay? When it comes to these beliefs, a lot of these we were hypnotized. Because what happens to a child here, in Dr. Rima Labo, and in his quantitative EEG and neurofeedback book, and I've been trained in neurofeedback. That's where they put electrodes on your head and they measure your brain waves, and you have alpha, delta, and theta and beta and that. And so what happens is that a child between birth and 2 years old and then up to 6 years old has this delta and theta, which is this more suggestible kind of brain waves, like hypnagogic, and so they're able, or hypnagogic state, and so they're able to take things in. They use their imagination more. So that's why a child, right, a young child can say, okay, the mud pie's a real pie, and you just hope they don't serve it to you and just show it to you, right? And teddy bears are really real, and they can have the little tea parties and all that. Why? Because children are very imaginative. And we learn a lot of these things with all the intensity of the imagination. And so a lot of times they're stronger than they should be. They're felt deep in the body. They're felt deep in our deep thoughts in our brain. They're well wired, and when we were very impressionable, and so that's why they can stick with us. Now the good news is God can help us retrain ourselves, and we can unlearn these things. But to pretend that these things aren't real to us, it would not serve us well. We need to know that these things were emotionally believed, they're emotionally felt, and Lord, I want to start knowing the truth. And we're going to give you plenty of things. I've done a thing where I've got over 100 lies in it. What's the truth? What scriptures go with it? So as we start to believe, understand some of the lies we're believing about ourselves, we can start to realize what God is saying about it and that. And so you can read 7 and 8 and realize that some of this. On the bottom of page 8, receiving love or self-rejection. In their book, Receiving Love, the authors, Dr. Harville Hendricks and Dr. Helen Hunt, share how our early childhood can stunt the conception of being loved. And I thought he wrote something really succinct, because they were teaching how to improve your marriage. They were going all around the world doing marriage seminars for many, many years, and they came to a place where they were ready to get divorced. He came to a place where he realized that he didn't believe his wife loved him. And she thought that was absurd. What are you talking about? And he came to a place much like I did, where he realized that he felt unlovable, that there was something in him that he couldn't just receive love, and hence the name of the book. That's why the book gravitated to me years ago, Receiving Love. And I think this is interesting. Let's look at it, and I'll read it. Every one of us rejects or hates some aspect of ourselves, often without knowing it. Self-rejection is the most universal and least recognized problem in our lives. It is the source of all our difficulties in giving and receiving love, and it contributes substantially to the significant social problems we face as a society. Although we may rebel against this notion, we shall see that the processes that led to self-rejection are inevitable part of having been born and reared by our caretakers. All of us are guilty of causing self-rejection in our children, and all of us have experienced that at the hand of our parents. Even those of us who were fortunate enough to be well-parented and to be good parents ourselves are not entirely immune. The question isn't whether self-rejection is a factor in our lives, it's how much of a factor it is, and how can we recognize and deal with it. The way individuals connect with the people close to them reveals what they've learned from past relationships. The problems they have in establishing and maintaining bonds are informative. On the simplest level, these problems demonstrate whether they've learned that relationships are safe and people can be trusted, or being close to others is dangerous and people are likely to end up hurting you. The fights, withdrawals, and hurt feelings are really clues to both partners' psychological histories. They not only demonstrate where they are, but chronicle where they've been. It is a cognitive shift for most people to understand that almost all negative behaviors are a result of psychic injuries that have not been healed. Being quick to anger or excessively self-absorbed, for example, is more often a symptom of unhealed wounds than a character defect. When people are mistreated, especially as children, they don't know they've sustained a hit that strongly shapes the way they will connect to friends and other intimates in the future. It seems as if the past should stay in the past, but the truth is that the past is always with us. It's just a question of how it manifests. Talking with an empathic listener is crucial for figuring that out. Talking helps all of us recognize the hurt, attach meaning to it, and undertake whatever personal changes are advisable. It's very much like when you break a bone. It is important to get the bone reset and give it time to heal so you don't end up permanently crippled. And that's part of our goal in this class, is to understand some of these things that we've grown up, these lies about ourselves, these things that aren't true but feel so true, and where we can start changing them because we react, we predict because of what we believe like that. And this class is not about bashing parents. It's not about, I could have my kids stand up here and they could tell you all kinds of things, but that's beside the point. The point is, we're grown up now, and we want to take those things and we want to change what we can. And so we need to start becoming aware. And we want to, emotional recognition, and you can see the second paragraph there, is to catch ourselves reacting to these negative beliefs, then catch ourselves agreeing with them, right? We want to go back over some of those beliefs and start catching ourselves. And how do we do that? When we start to have a hint that something's going on, we start to feel that I'm starting to feel, there's energy going on, or it's low energy, whatever. Ask ourselves, slow it down, become aware, and ask, what's going on? Take a breath. What's going on? What am I feeling? What am I believing? And ultimately, we need to ask, what's the truth? And as we can start to do that, As we can start to do that, we'll start finding out the truth, but we need to start doing that. So one of the ways that we can start to be aware is start to just get to know our body a little bit. And so I've given you a homework assignment here, and that is to do a body scan. It doesn't have, it's not a new age trick or anything like that. It's just simply observing, right? And so what you can do is you can get in a comfortable position and at home and wherever, and just don't do it when you're driving, please, and but close your eyes. Of course, some of you, never mind. But anyways, close your eyes, and then start with your head, and just, ask yourself, do you feel any tightness, any tension, anything in the head, if so, focus, become aware of it, and then, take a deep breath and just relax it. Let it, feel the difference. For example, I know I carry a lot of tension in my jaw, right? And so if I was to do that, I would, where's my jaw? Drop it. Get rid of these furrows, just kind of melt the face down, right? And you'll be surprised. Some of us carry tension in our shoulders, right? Drop the shoulders. Feel the difference. Start to become aware of what you're doing. In the face, do you feel tightness and tension? You'd be surprised how many of us go around with tension headaches, because of this hypervigilance, right? And our neck, do you feel tightness in the neck, soreness? Just, relax it. But start to notice your shoulders, your chest, any tightness, stomach, do you feel butterflies or upsetness? Start to become aware of it. Now, let's say that you don't have some. Well, then think of an anxious thought and start to see where you feel. Just get to know what your body does, okay? What it feels like, where you can start to become aware, where we can start recognizing it, okay? We can't be resilient to something we're unaware. All we're going to be doing then is correcting behavior we acted out on, right? And we want to do better than that. We want to, and as we do, we'll start to learn truth about ourselves. Our brain will start to be retrained, and we'll learn all that. So the stomach, the arms, the legs, and, it only takes about 3 minutes to do this. So if you can do it every day this week, that would be really great. And then turn to page 11. Actually, turn to page 12, I'm sorry. You can read 11. It's a good little introduction about this. But what I've done here is I've taken those things. I feel safety and security with those I trust and love. And for me is constant, unconditional, always there. Do I know that I'm loved? Well, what I've done is taken some scriptures that talk about that. For example, I feel safety and security. Well, the Lord is my strength and my song. He's given me victory. This is my God, and I will praise Him. But I trust Him. Start to meditate on some of these things. Ask God, say, Lord, speak to me through this. I want to meditate on this. I want to feel safe and secure with you. I want to feel that love for me is constant. Well, look at that second one. I am convinced that nothing can ever separate me from God's love. Meditate on it. Meditate on that. He talks about forgiveness. I know that I am loved, special, and valued. Look at that first verse. See how very much our Father loves us, for He's called us His children, and that is what we are. But the people who belong to this world don't recognize that we're God's children, right? And so anyways, I put different scriptures there that you can look at, and you can do some of that meditating this week. And start to ask God, Lord, help me start to understand some of these things, okay? So that kind of introduces the thing that, listen, we have stress, we emote, we react, and our job now is starting to recognize it. So this week, start to recognize. Keep a little journal if you want of different emotional episodes you have. And don't forget, it could be the lethargic kind, the low, I'm just kind of depressed. I don't feel like going to work today. I'm just or it could be the real, boy, am I angry, I'm very upset, or I'm nervous, right? Just start to see. And here again, it's not a judgment, okay? It's an is. We can't correct something we don't see, right, that we don't know. So we want to be resilient. It's not a sin to have emotions, okay? We have emotions. We aren't our emotions, okay? So we can work with these. All right, so let's go ahead and close in prayer and ask God to just speak to our hearts. Thanks for coming. Invite people. We're early in the class here, so feel free to invite anyone that you want to come. They can always pick up the lessons and catch up with us. So, Father, I thank you for bringing us together tonight. I thank you for each one here. I pray, Lord, this whole subject of emotional recognition, Lord, might it start to make some sense to us. Might we not just go through this week just reacting. Might we start to see some of it? Might we start to figure out, well, what am I believing? What am I thinking? Lord, open our minds to start seeing some of this. Help us go back through the notes and check off some of those things, Lord, that we might be believing about ourselves that aren't true, but nevertheless, we feel them. So, Lord, we want to see those changes in our lives, and we pray, Lord, that you will do this. Help us mature. And we'll thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Thank you. All right. Good job. Next week, we're going to start our adventures on the brain and everything. It's going to be fun. So, you'll enjoy. So bring some others, okay? Thanks so much. God bless you.